Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I've been waiting for the go-ahead from Elisa at the back, and I've just been given the go-ahead. So welcome, everyone, to Pewter Live. It's really lovely to see you here today. And we have three very distinguished individuals to have a little chat about pewter and hopefully discuss a little bit about what they like and all the good things about it. So we have, in no particular order, Angus Patterson, who is Senior Curator of Metalwork, Decorative Art and Sculpture at the Victoria and Albert Museum. He's also part of the organising committee for Pewter Live. We have Fleur Grenier, who is a Pewtersmith and sculptor, and she also does an awful lot of work to bring Pewter Live to everybody. And we have David Clarke, who I am reliably informed is a troublemaker. So I will leave them to give you a little bit more background detail about themselves. Perhaps start with Angus.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So, yeah, good morning, everyone. Some of you have probably heard me before at this event, so I'll try not to be too repetitive. But I'm Senior Curator of Metalwork at the V&A. I look after around about 600 years of a whole range of metalwork. So I can be writing about electrometallurgy 1 minute, Renaissance armour another, and obviously pewter another minute. Must have figured about that. So I've been in the museum for 27 years, and I've been involved in lots of different projects when the museum has been completely transforming itself over the last 25 years or so. So it's been an amazing privilege to work there on all these different gallery displays that send your specialism all over the place and try and keep your mind reasonably agile. Most recent thing I've been involved with is I've just spent 12 days in Ghana. We have some looted gold from the Ashanti Kingdom in the collection that was looted in 1874. We're forbidden from restituting the gold, which can be a bit of a problem, but we are trying to do everything we can within the limits of that Restitution Act. So we've actually done a long-term loan to Manchia Palace Museum of the gold, and I've been out there working with the staff in the museum over the last 2 weeks ago now. And it was one of the most moving things in my whole career. So you're catching me at a moment where I think I've hit a turning point in my career, because that 2 weeks will live with me forever, but I'm going to leave it there. So.
I'm Fleur Grenier, and I've worked as a Pewtersmith now for over 30 years. Well, worked with pewter for 30 years. I design and make contemporary homeware, and I also do sculptures as well. I work to commissions, I show through exhibitions and fairs and museums, and I also do some teaching as well from my workshop in West Sussex.
I am David Clarke, based in London, Silversmith, but what do I do? I choose the materials which are right for the project. So I don't stay specific. I'm a generalist, not a master. And I like to stay tricky with provoking, irritating, upsetting, being a pain in the arse, really. It's a nice position to have.
Well, I wonder actually at this point, so Fleur and David did bring in a couple of pieces of their pewter, and we do have, depending on your interpretation, a beautiful heart or an arse. And both Fleur and David are quite happy for them to be passed around and you to have a little look at them whilst they're talking. So and what I'm going to sort of throw into the hat to everybody, let's start with Angus. What's so special about pewter?
What a good question. Well, for me, I'm not a maker. I'm a material culture historian, and so for me, I look after historic material going back. The V&A's collection goes back. The earliest pieces we have are from the 13th century, but the vast majority is from the late 16th through the 17th and 18th centuries. And pewter was one of the most common materials that every household would have. So the aristocracy would eat from pewter most days, would maybe bring out the silver for special occasions, and then even poorer households would have 1 or 2 bits of pewter in them. So it's a great material. The history of the material design of pewter covers a really broad cross-section of social history, which is something I find really fascinating. Fleur uses a lovely phrase in that pewter has been a constant companion to her throughout her career, and for me, that's what I think pewter is probably for most households in Europe. For about 500 years, pewter was a constant companion in that household, and people were using it every day. There's people doing really exciting things, two of them at the table now, but lots of you doing exciting things with pewter as well. And I'm particularly interested in objects that bring out the material qualities of pewter, how it flows, where an object can be best produced in pewter and not another material. And I think that's lots of things in the competition show that today, but also the work of both David and Fleur does that too. So it's a great metal and it's accessible.
If you're making things in pewter, both of you, so what is so special about pewter, its inherent qualities and things like that? Perhaps you can tell us a bit more.
Well, for me, I was first introduced to it while I was doing my degree at Sir John Cass in the second year, and I was just starting to develop a personal style. I never really did any straight lines. There was nothing like that in my work. And the pewter, I just loved the fluidity of it as a material. And the techniques that you could do with it, it really complemented the work that I was starting to produce. And it's the freedom that it gives you as well. There's something with pewter, there's the thing, it's not as expensive as silver, but there's that ability, that opportunity to play with it as a material. You can really experiment with it. And it just gives you that freedom. So if you want to try something, and you can just really go for it, and if it doesn't work, there's that you can melt it back down. But it's always been that ability to just really play and allow yourself to go with the material. I mean, for me, it's that lovely fluid style, fluidity of it as a material. I do lots of flowing lines and forms, and I mean, even now, after 30 years of working with it, last year I started experimenting. I wanted to try doing something different with it. My work's quite, I will go through a design process, do a drawing, do a model, do a mould, and then I will cast the piece. And I wanted to try something different, and I started exploring. I would pour in the pewter over grasses, dried grasses, and I found it just captured it. It didn't burn it or anything, and then so that led to a whole new range of work that I showed at Collect with. The pouring the pewter over, I preserved leaves and ferns and also over lichen, and then took sections away and sculpted more sections, which I then cast into the pewter. They're in the other. I was going to bring them, they were a bit spiky. I didn't want to hand them round and a bit lethal for it, but that actually the organic pieces then flowed into the pewter pieces through it. And you could never do that with another metal. It's the properties of the pewter that allows you to do that. It didn't burn the piece. The lichen pieces within it, I can spray them with water and it'll continue to grow. So it's suddenly a living sculpture. It's a living piece. So after 30 years, it still surprises me and it's still a joy to work with. Yeah.
I think for me, I would add on to Fleur's comment of it really allows the act of play in the way that you can't in other metals. It really, it's not, and I mean this in the right sense of it, it's not precious. It is precious, but it's not precious. And it's playing off of that. For me, the history, the miseducation and the misunderstanding of pewter is super interesting. So the historical, the political, the potential to really push it in very different directions, and I mean that beyond the material, but the way you show it, and when you show it, how that can also re-inform, re-educate. I think it's not only our job as makers to make the work, but we have to talk about it, we have to confirm that it is what it is, because there's a lot of misunderstanding. But I also actively put lead back into pewter if it's right for the piece. So I think the act of play is absolutely critical. And I think there you go into a space of unknown, that you don't have pure knowledge or pure mastership, but you discover, like Fleur did, you discover stuff by just doing and not making assumptions. And so for me, that's super juicy, that silver or gold or that rubbish doesn't have. Well, it does, but in different ways.
And I mean, we've got some pictures, I think, and perhaps if there's any comments that you would like to make about what Pewter has done for those particular pieces?
Well, that's an example, Fleur, isn't it, of one of the ones you're just talking about, with
Yeah.
you using, but it's a living sculpture.
Yeah, that's the piece with the preserved fern leaves and the twigs and the lichen on them. So when I pour the pewter over the ferns and the twigs, and then it's over a steel former, so it's instantly cooling the pewter. So it's freezing those organic pieces in. So it's actually freezing them. And then what I wanted to do was sculpt. I didn't want to just leave it like that, because to me that's not challenging enough. I wanted to push it further. So it was then sculpting the pieces of lichen and the twigs and then soldering them in afterwards, which actually it's quite a skill in itself, because pewter, it's the similar techniques to soldering silver, except so you're only focusing the torch on the area that you're soldering, which enabled me to solder those pieces in situ with the ferns. So there were a couple of ferns that didn't make it and floated off in the flame, but yeah, it's just that challenge of actually working with it like that.
For me, one of the things I'm always interested in is when you see the same idea expressed maybe 100, 200, 300 years apart, but expressed in a way that's appropriate for the time in which it's expressed. So this reminds me a lot of Renaissance life casting. We've got a early 16th century mortar, bronze mortar in the collection at the V&A, where there are life cast lizards on it. Horrible process, but the live lizard was cast as it was, and it appears and it's not just animals, also it's plants. It's lovely. But also in the middle of the 19th century, I will be careful not to drone on for hours about electrometallurgy, but in the 19th century, electroplating and electroforming technology, there's this lovely story which we've been trying to find out whether it really is true or not, but Prince Albert visited Elkington's factory in 1843, so it's really early on in the development of electrometallurgy, and to show how accurate the process was, where you're depositing through electrolysis molecule by molecule of copper or gold onto an object, they decided to electrogild a rose for him, or a rose bud. And in doing so, they managed to electrogild a cobweb that was on the rosebud. And so it just was a demonstration of how exciting the technology was. Prince Albert got so excited, he went back to either Marlborough House or Buckingham Palace, I'm not too sure which, and set up his own electroplating vats and had a go himself. So it's little things like that where, and I've seen it with Ella McIntosh's material as well, there's another object we'll show in a minute, but this whole idea of there's no such thing as an original idea, and that's what's wonderful, because people have connections across the centuries, and they're expressing ideas according to the time that they live in.
Have we got any teapots? I think there's an interesting. Have we got a slide of the stretched teapot somewhere?
One of David's, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look,
That's interesting. You were talking about
there you go, on the right-hand side.
ideas. No such thing as an original idea, but that's.
That's quite original. Yeah.
Depends who you speak to. So the teapot is. So my training is really classic silversmithing. So when I got really fed up with it, it was, and I kept on being told what I should do or what I shouldn't do. And one thing that the silversmiths always say is, you're not a silversmith until you've made a teapot. So I was really pissed off with a silver platerer who missed a deadline for me. So he gave me a teapot, but what he did before he gave it to me was he burnt a hole in it, so I couldn't use it. And then I chopped it up to change it. So then I stuffed it with lead to make it highly poisonous, so I could kill him. But then there's a lot of references to architecture, to gutters, to coffins, and all of the lead have associations with architectural metalwork, with coffins were lead-lined. So you get these historical connections, references that take a possible object in a very, very different direction and can be picked up and collected by very, very different people. And again, I work quite differently to Fleur, where I don't do drawings and I don't do mock-ups. I collect these objects, and I buy a lot of objects now that I get given. The majority of pieces that I get are from old people's homes, so they've got nowhere to go because they've died. and the families don't want them. And I think that also family history, the idea of, what's it called? What is it when it's handed down?
Inheritance.
Yeah, inheritance. What objects are important, what's not important, where's the value? And I think all of that in the mix for me is really, really juicy ground. Because then nearly all of my work goes abroad. But interestingly, I took an old lead teapot of mine, which I made in 2010, re-chopped it up this year for a teapot exhibition, which is on now with the Goldsmith Company. But it's really interesting there because, to stick lead in the Goldsmith Company exhibition is super, super brilliant. And again, I give them a material list, but I don't think they read the material list. So they're expecting a silver teapot, and then they get a lead teapot, and then it's too late because it's in. And again, it's this kind of cheeky attitude of putting it out there and not stressing too much. And for me, humour is really important.
Well, they've also made you a Freeman, haven't they? Which
Yes, they have.
You've become Mr. Establishment.
Yes, absolutely. But again, I mean, that's really important for me because it's easy to complain when you're outside, but when you can affect change by being inside. So it's really important for me to do that because they need to shift. They need to really change their ways. And I'm happy to go in there and be a pain.
So the objects you're chopping up are, a lot of the objects you're chopping up are Britannia metal, and they're objects that would have probably been scrapped if you hadn't saved them in that way. So it's an odd thing for me, chopping up something that's 150 years old is completely against my natural instinct, but you saved an object from obsolescence.
Yes.
So what I would like to know is, would you, I think I know the answer, would you go into the storeroom of the Goldsmith Company and choose a Paul de Lamry teapot and treat it the same way you would?
Yes.
And what would how would its meaning be different from something like that?
No idea. I'd need to handle it. I mean, again, it's interesting what language gets dumped on us, and how we're referenced or referred to or kind of pigeonholed. But for me, I would need to handle the piece. There are pieces that I've had for 15 years and I've done nothing with. There's a piece that came in yesterday and I chopped it up straight away. And also, I mean, I get told that I'm a terrorist or just ridiculous rubbish. And but I also think that there's the way that I cut them is almost like a surgeon. It's very quietly done. And then you really read the object so differently when it's released from its original form, from its original function, from its possible repositioning. Even if that's stretched, the references just completely open up, and that's where it really becomes a playful thing. And for me, everything is, my own work is material. It's not it doesn't become sacred for me. It's like if I get bored with it, I'll chop it up.
So it's more clinical than
Yeah.
violent.
Well, it's much more strategic. It's like, okay, what is, if I can do this once, where can it go and what does it refer to?
Well, I'm just thinking now, so at Pewter Live, you have had a look at the competition entries. Anything that particularly caught your eye as he looks in the catalogue?
Yeah, there was.
Okay, Angus, let's start with you.
Yes, several, and it seems unfair to single a few out. But as I mentioned earlier, I particularly love those objects that bring out the material qualities of pewter the best. So I really love The Wind in My Sails by Nicola Canavan. I think that's a beautiful piece of work. I'm super impressed with the work of Freeman College, and we're certainly keen to support that in the V&A exhibition that we're going to host from the end of next week. And there are a number of things. I mean, Richard Reeves' work is always just mind-blowing. It's terrifying looking at that, thinking how we're going to pack that up and move that to the V&A. I think it's designed to sway a bit, isn't it? I hope so, because it does. So yeah, I think those are the ones that really stick out. But I'm just really impressed that with the number of student entries and the quality of them as well, it seems to be getting better year on year. So I love Pewter Live. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I think, the standard of work has been really good, and there's such a diverse range of pieces as well. And I had similar with Richard Reed's The Summer Breeze piece, because technically I know how difficult that would be to make, and the amount of different processes and skills within that. And I also really like the ebb and flow brooch, the shoulder piece. I just love the idea of the way that would sit and feel, it would nestle within the different areas of the shoulder, and I love that sort of fluid piece of that as well. But yeah, the standard of work is very good. Yeah.
I think the breadth is really, really good. The one piece that I first ignored, but then went back to after the catalogue, was Alice Steele, and this idea of sound and music, and then the connection to musical instruments. I want to hear it. So that kind of activation of something, I think, is super, super interesting.
And there's a continuation. You all seek to enhance the way that you work with pewter, and we're bringing now. So Fleur has been awarded a Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust Award, so she is a Quest Scholar, and the idea of that is to promote excellence and to support people doing amazing things in their different area of creativity. So Fleur will be going out to the United States to study with another Pewterer to learn some things. Perhaps you can tell us a bit about that, and then move on to David. You're a Loewe Award finalist, and that is another significant, it's worldwide competition, isn't it? Yeah. So Fleur, tell us a bit about Quest.
Well, for me, continuous development of my work and skills is very important to me. I'm always trying to learn different techniques and processes and continuously moving my work forward. And I sort of reached the stage I wanted to do more of the larger sculptural one-off pieces, and I felt there was a gap within the skills, wanting to do more of the hammer forming and raising techniques and processes with my work. And there's a Pewtersmith in the States called Logan Woodall, which is an amazing name to start with. So I'm going to be working with him and doing 2 weeks in Penland School of Crafts, working with him, and then I go to work with him at the university one-to-one. So the skills there I will then develop further with him. I mean, I cannot say how excited I am to do this, because the opportunity to 3 weeks to go and learn new skills and play. Once you've been working for a while, you don't often get that opportunity. And I was thinking, well, maybe I should plan things, what I'm going to do. When I get there, and actually I'm going with nothing, I'm just going to be led by him. And I'm really looking forward to the conversations I can have with him about it as well, because he's very passionate about it, and he's really trying to push it in the States, in the universities. Yeah. So, and he wants to work with other departments doing research with it. So I know that it's going to be an exciting opportunity to be able to go and do that with him. So yeah, no, I'm just looking forward to it.
Tell us all about.
So the Loewe Foundation is a Spanish fashion brand.
Nice handbags.
Huge. But their history is leather wear, so the handbags is where it grew from. Their new creative director is Jonathan Anderson, who has a huge vision and respect for craft, right across craft. And so Loewe Foundation Craft Prize is a global competition. I applied 5 times before I got in, so Pewter Live, just keep on going. There is a chance you'll win at some point. Good luck. And yeah, so I was a finalist. So they select 30 artists every year. I think the top prize is 50,000 euros. But when you're a finalist, it kind of is the prize, because they ship you out somewhere. So I flew to Seoul in South Korea, first class. I drank all the way. I drank twice the amount all the way home. I used every facility, opportunity, and I now have a reputation with the foundation. So they still move around. So they just announced 2 days ago a Mexican ceramicist who won in Paris. So they move around globally. Very strategic, very smart as a brand. And I was really interested in exploiting the brand association. And I was very much a pain in the arse for them as well. With these kind of objectives of your work needs to be photographed against white, and I'm like, no. And one of the things for the catalogue was choose your favourite tool, and I'm like, no. And then, because they always want a hammer, and it's like, no, we're not doing this. So I chose the electric kettle, and they said, you can't choose a kettle, it's not a tool. So then we had a long conversation about what's a tool. And they ended up putting in the electric kettle, so I won. But it's really, it's great. It's for them to really push that. And then they do pop-up exhibitions. So they commissioned, I think, 30 alumni to produce lamps for Milan Furniture Fair a couple of months ago. So they're very active and very strategic where they place themselves. And you can work off the back of that, which is super smart.
So both of you have made that transition from just playing around and designing. And when did you decide that actually I can do this, I can make some money out of it, or it can be my living? So for people here who are starting out, what would you say about that?
It's tough. I wouldn't deny that. But I think when I was at college, I worked for Marks and Spencer's for 13 years. And that funded me and supported me. Then I did a small amount of teaching, which I got sacked from for being abusive towards it's been recorded. Anyway, but I think if you can get past 5 years, you can really, you find a space, you find a place, you find some clients, potentially a gallery, potentially the market. And I think then, but it's bloody hard work.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, at the end of it, I mean, I'm doing a job that I absolutely love. I mean, I also worked part-time when I initially set up. I think you have to find other ways of doing it. And it's a very diverse career. One day I can be doing a commission, the next day I could be teaching, or I can be, but you meet some amazing people. And I think the thing with the craft world is they're a really wonderful group of people, and they're a very generous group of people as well, and so it is a lovely way to pay my mortgage. But every day I go into work and I'm happy. I'm doing what I enjoy. Yeah.
And also, I think it's really important. When I was sitting where you are sitting, I never imagined I'd be here, and I'd never imagined that I would be doing what I'm doing. And I think it's
still a shock when people ask you to come and be on a panel.
But also, it's incredible what people are looking for and what people want. And I think if you're excited about what you're doing and you can talk about it and you can get on with it and just do it step by step, I think, over a couple of years, those steps are actually quite big jumps. Yeah. But it needs to be manageable. So there's also risks, there's also unknowns, but they're also super exciting.
This competition, Pewter Live competition, it's an amazing opportunity, especially this year. You've got the chance to showcase in the V&A. What could be better than the first thing on your CV after you leave university? I've showcased at the V&A. I've not got that yet. It's an amazing...
Let's put in next.
It is a wonderful opportunity. I mean, it's going for, if you see opportunities for exhibitions, for residencies, anything like that. I mean, I'm always doing things like that. Because also it can take your work in a direction you wouldn't necessarily think of going. It's because sometimes if there's a project brief to it, you have to work to that brief and you're thinking in a different way. So any opportunities like that, you should be open to them and go for them.
Take it.
You've mentioned education, Fleur, so all of you are involved in educating people in different ways. Perhaps, Angus, you can tell us a bit about, because the V&A does a huge amount, but also you within your specific area.
Yeah, we have a dedicated learning department, and they are an integral part of every gallery project we do, but then there are learning initiatives that go on top of that as well. And then individually as curators, we all are involved in teaching as much as we possibly can, really. And it can be anything from a formal lecture, and I always insist on, I always feel if you work at somewhere like the V&A, which is the National Museum of History of Art, Design and Performance, your PowerPoints ought to be beautiful. So I always put loads of effort into my PowerPoints and try and make them as beautiful as possible, because it's a really useful way of communicating particularly to people who learn visually rather than just with someone like me talking at them. But we also do a lot of object handling sessions. Good moment to advertise that we plan to do a Makers Day, hopefully in mid-July, for the entries and people who've come to support Pewter Live at the V&A. We need to get on and start organising that. We did it a couple of years ago, did it last year, I think, possibly as well. And it's a really good way for us to get historic material out of the collection, which is a drum I always bang, because as I've mentioned before, there's no such thing as an original idea. The idea of we're there because our collections are there to inspire new design. So we grew out of the Great Exhibition. The idea was to get good designs into Britain's workshops and factories, and we came under the Board of Trade, the government's Board of Trade. So we were seen as a commercial operation, although the teaching was based on providing models for inspiration. So, and that hands-on work, you can't really know. Particularly, I've been doing a bit of work with the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia, majority of which is paintings. And the teaching that is targeted at paintings is very different from the teaching that you do with material 3D objects. And you really can't appreciate an object until you get to handle it, look inside it, feel its weight, imagine what the person was experiencing when they used this on a day-to-day basis, where its strengths and weaknesses, how does it work when you're pouring a flagon or something like that, what's the balance like? And so those object handling sessions are something that we really do quite a lot, because they are a chance to feel the different materials, the different weights, get in touch more with the original maker that made it. There are little telltale signs inside that often are hidden from the outside. One of the things I love, one of my favourite bits of historic pewter is when a pewter, say from the 17th or 18th century, has cast a handle directly onto an object, and in order to stop the pewter burning through the body of the main pewter object, they will take a piece of wet linen and press it on the inside to cool the pewter down, and it leaves their thumbprint on the inside of the object. So opening up an object and showing that, it takes you straight back to the 18th century pewter. It's a lovely little revelation. So yeah, as object-based as we possibly can be, and ideas coming out of those objects, which I think is possibly, that relates in a slightly different way to the way you both teach craft. It's coming out of the material.
What about your method of teaching, Val? Because you have lots of work.
When I studied at Sir John Cass and then went on to the Royal College because we were there together, and pewter was. It was not really taught. There weren't many people that knew much about it. I was actually put in a separate room. I was put in a separate room at the Royal College as well. I was just in a little cupboard, really. And the books that I were using, they were 1970s, very dated books. So it was, I mean, for me, one of the things was to get a book out there that would show what you could do with it, and so many different techniques and processes with it that you can use as well. And so, I mean, for me, that was an important thing. So, which I had when that was published, that was a great starting point, because it then takes it out there. But there's a real issue with contaminations, with people thinking about contamination. It can be overcome with silver and pewter. It's just the working way of doing it. So, when I was trying to learn, there weren't many people that actually knew a lot of techniques. A lot of silversmiths know how to do work with silver, but it's a very different metal to work with. It's softer, there's different melting temperatures and things like that which you have to overcome. Well, learn, not overcome, just learn how to do it. So by running the courses and workshops and doing the book, that's a way of me getting those things over. And there's nothing better than when somebody comes to I mean, I have a space at my studio, but I also go out to universities and different places teaching as well. But somebody will come in and in the morning they're quite frightened and intimidated by it, or they've not done it before. And at the end of the day, they're so excited and they're sending pictures to friends and, you know, I've done this, and a big smile on the face, and seeing what people can do with it and working with it. So it's getting that out there as well, because it's still not many people know of the different techniques. So it's really just trying to share those skills and processes with it.
I think you had Angus attend your workshop here last year, and his first piece of cast pewter was exhibited at the V&A.
Put it into the display again next week, so I've shown it at the V&A, I have to say.
And what about your different form of education? which you're not doing workshops, but you formally educate.
Yeah, I formally educate outside of the UK. So I work in the Academy of Fine Arts in Munich and Alchemia, which is a private jewellery school in Florence. And it's really about, for me, I don't do any technical discussion or instruction. It's all about the thinking, the concept, the ideas, their project, how they can own it, deliver it, be brave, building confidence, building belief, relevance for now, and all of that. So it's tough, but I love it. It's tougher for them than it is for me.
So do you see yourself as a teacher or more of a guide? I don't know. How would you describe it?
It's more mentoring. Yeah. It's more of a mentorship. Yeah. I mean, my job description for Fleur, I can't say it because we're being filmed, but is to F them up, is my job description in an email. I have it. Yeah, but that's my sole purpose to go there. And that's at MA. I mean, it's at MA level, so it's all right. You know, they can handle it. But it's a lovely job description.
And what about the future of pewter? What would you like to see? Or how do you think things could develop? Do we need to try and change the reputation that pewter has? We were talking about that earlier, that you wouldn't look at a painting and say, well, there's about a tenner's worth of paint in there, so I'll give you 50 quid for it. It's the inherent artistic ability of the individual making things. So is that something that, you know, we need to try and work on?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, it's 100%, and it's getting it out of the hall and into other places. It's being really brave in where the possible market is. As I said earlier, all of mine goes abroad, and I'm very fortunate that it sells. But it's testing those markets and exposing the work in a really brave way where not the normal audience see it, but actually the audience is challenged by it, and that is an educational process to really stand by the work and really talk about the work and to really, evangelize the good stuff that is all around pewter. Because it's still, you know, I had a conversation two weeks ago about when is lead going to be removed from pewter, and it's like, come on. And it's still, you know, there's still a lot of myths there, and we have to, for me, it's our responsibility for everyone that works with pewter to really debunk it, but also really test the market. It's like, we know the known markets, but it's like stretch it out and take some risks and really be confident with what you're doing.
I think it was good this year at Clarke to see. I think there was 5 different people doing pewter there. So I mean, So it's good to see it's actually got. And I mean, Clarke is the main show exhibition of and so to get it in there and people start to see it and just being aware of it, because you don't see it in that environment very often. So it's slowly happening. Yep. But, yeah.
When you say that most of your work goes overseas, is that because of something about the market here, or what's the reason for that? Given that a lot of the people here may end up, their immediate market will be in Britain.
Yeah, I mean, when my work was more conventional, then the UK was my market. But then there are curators, whether they're from the design field or the fine art field or from the craft field, that see the work and they then invite in for exhibition or commission. It can be museums. It's that breadth of network, I guess, and it's building that network and really testing what the potential of it is. And sometimes you get totally once in a lifetime dream commissions come along, but it's really I mean, I don't settle for the easy stuff. I'm very happy to have those difficult conversations with those people that need convincing. But generally, people are absolutely hungry for different work.
But it's more conservative here, you think?
I don't know if I'm the one. With pewter, yes. Yes, I would say so.
And when the exhibition was the Pewter Live at the V&A, when I was ambushing people who were sort of walking past and having a look, the accessibility of pewter appealed to a lot of people, and I just think, what's your take on that, Angus, from the V&A perspective, where we were amongst these enormous pieces of hugely valuable silver, and yet the pewter still stood out to individuals?
Yeah, I mean, it seems an odd thing to stick a display of pewter in the middle of the gallery that's the National Collection of Silver, but that's a pragmatic reason. We don't have that many spaces for doing temporary displays in the museum, but we can turn it into a virtue, because a lot of the material that's around is historic material. The makers are dead, we don't know the makers, that sort of thing. And with pewter, we're able to show just how accessible it is in comparison with that material, and there are little display techniques we can do to assist that. So although some of the makers might not welcome it, I put the little thumbnail photographs of all the makers on their object labels, again, to humanise what they're looking at. These are real people making these things, and some of the material around you in the silver galleries can look otherworldly. It's just, it's very historic, and there are different layers of values that go with that historic material. So I think anything we can do to make it more accessible, and I just think I want Pewter Live to go from strength to strength and to keep going, and I want the V&A to keep supporting it. It's a year-on-year thing for us to do the proposal, but we've set a precedent, and the director loves it, which is really good. So I'll be making sure I take him around to see it in the next couple of weeks once it's up. But I think one of the things, just going back to that question, a lot of the feedback we had a sponsor, one of our museum sponsors, gallery sponsors, came in with his daughter, and his daughter was blown away by that display 2 years ago, and she had exactly the revelation that we wanted when we showed it. Was, I never knew it was, you could work it cold. I never knew you could, I thought Judith Godden is so modest about her work, and she describes herself as a hobby pewterer. I mean, she's absolutely brilliant, and just working away in her shed. And I think to be able to show professional pewterers alongside, or professional artists alongside students and tutors, but also alongside hobby pewterers, is something you just don't get the chance to do very often in the V&A. So it's something I want to keep pushing. But on that question of where it's going, I would feel that it's really difficult, because I think certainly in an environment like the V&A, pewter gets judged against silver. And is it the poor person's silver all the time? And it's a battle I am fighting constantly. And I think when we all know how beautiful pewter can be with one-off artistic commissions and sculptural commissions and that sort of thing, but it's quite hard sometimes to convince people who are then surrounded by silver or more accustomed to the silver world. Where pewter has its real strength to me is in product design, because it is less expensive than silver. It has its own fantastic qualities that work particularly well with other materials like ceramic and wood. So I would push the product design going forward, I think, with as opposed to the one-off artistic commissions, as the one thing that will help start to change perceptions around the material.
It's getting into more people's homes, isn't
Yes,
it? So they're more aware of it. Yeah.
But I also think, how we use social media and how we photograph the work and the image of pewter, I think that's a really, really quick win, and that is to a global audience, and it's free and it's obtainable, and you can still have some mystery in there. I mean, I'm working with a family where the 8-year-old daughter has a £25,000 budget for a piece of work. So I'm working with the parents, but the 8-year-old has all the say, not the parents. And I just think, it's...
What are they going to grow up to be like?
The world is the world. But what's interesting is the parents know that she's going to inherit the piece, which is why she's absolutely in the thick of the discussion. And I'm looking at her going, what? You? What? And I didn't know this before they arrived. And then all of a sudden I'm talking to an 8-year-old. And it's like, what is this? But she will inherit that piece of work. And I just think we kind of have these views or these kind of skewed ideas of who collectors are or who the audience could be. But actually, when we really think about the future audiences are the young ones. And it's like, how do we capture them? How do we get them on and really hungry and curious so they're going to flop the cash? And that's good.
I get the feeling that if we got the wine out soon, we could continue this and, you know, really get down to the nitty-gritty. But you have given us some fantastic thoughts and your views on things. I'm just wondering if anybody's got any questions they'd like to ask before we sort of wrap things up. Somebody put, come on, there's got to be one question somewhere. Alice.
I knew something about the history of pewter being slow at the lead. Because I mean, I'm currently doing pewter at the RCA, and it's still kind of forbidden to use it in the main workshops. I mean, I was sent to just meant to do it.
And were you at the little room at the end, by the electrical tank? Yeah, that's the one.
Yes, so for those at the back, Alice is saying there's still an issue about people thinking there's lead in pewter, and yeah.
And some of the technicians at my school still think that, but I don't know enough about sort of the truth about it to actually have an argument with them. So I think I'd be interested to know what the true story is about lead being added to pewter, or if that's ever.
Yeah, there's a really interesting survey that was done probably 20 years ago by members of the Silver Society in conjunction with Pewter's company. And they analysed about 30 pieces of silver over a 300-year period. And on average, they found that there was less than 0.1% of lead in the pewter. So it would more than likely be in there. The vast majority of historic pewter was cast. It was just to assist the casting. But it's not a common thing to put lead in historic pewter. The system based on the pewterer's touch mark, so you would register your touch mark, and then you that would be your guarantee that you're going to produce high quality pewter with no lead in it, and, you know, high quality tin, that sort of thing. That was also based on trust. So there is a possibility that some pewterers might have done it to save content, and you occasionally get people who are fined for substandard work and they risk losing their touch mark. So the touch mark should be a guarantee, but not every piece is tested. So there is always that slight possibility that some pieces could have it, but the majority don't. There was a metal called ley metal that bizarrely was used for tavern measures and for wine, and that can have a sort of 20 to 40% lead in it. I don't know whether they thought the alcohol in the wine would kill off the effects of the lead. But going right back to 1348, there are laws issued by the forerunner of this company to say that no lead was to be put in any pewter that came into contact with food. So no, it's fine. Yeah.
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 Anyone else?
Come on.
Do we know somebody who might lose his touch mark anytime soon?
I don't have one. I don't mark it.
Gentleman at the back.
I think, yeah, and I think we are losing it quickly. I mean, I don't know enough about curriculum within secondary school, but my understanding is that it goes and goes and goes, and again, it's about cost. But for me, you know, you put a bucket outside and you put a torch outside, and it's game on. But I think, you know, health and safety is health and safety, and it's ridiculous because it is used as a stopping tool rather than a protective tool. And of course, you need to take care, but also, what are we taking care of? And I just think they're so stretched. I mean, even within university, it starts there, but actually it goes right the way through to university. You know, to be shoved in a cupboard at MA is absolutely obscene. And I would, if I was that student, I would fight, and I would go to the dean and claim a case, because it's restricting creativity. And if the Royal College is doing that, then they should be ashamed of them. Still, 30 years on is shameful. And it always comes down to health and safety. And it's like, come on, put some goggles on, put some gloves on, it's all right. And if they're supervised, I mean, the beauty of pewter is you can cast in an intimate way where you can you can hold it, as long as it's packed well, or whatever you're doing, technically, which is not interesting, but it's like you can have it there, molten in your hands, and you don't get burnt. You can't do that with any other metal. The play for the potential, the recycling of it, all of that, totally educational. That's what they should be teaching.
I've done forestry school workshops, and they've been sat over an open fire with a ladle, and I mean, for the kids, that's a double whammy. You've got fire, you've got molten metal, and it just, in their element, absolutely love it.
And magic comes out of those situations. And if it's denied, then it's, you know, then you have to question what education is. And then you go right down a really not a good hole.
Well, I think you're absolutely right about getting younger children to work with it. But there's a danger also that it can be seen just as a starter metal, which I suspect it probably is at the moment, and then people are looking to go on to more expensive metals. So the difficult thing is starting kids early on it, but then keeping a line through so it goes through tertiary education and then out into the workforce where you can do what you do, where you're working with lots of different materials, but always pewter never just gets put aside as the starter metal or the cheaper option. I think it's got its own merits that need to be exploited.
I think we have to wrap things up now, but Angus, Fleur and David, I mean, it was just so interesting listening to you all. Thank you very much indeed for being on the panel. Fleur, you can stop frowning at me now. And if I could, this actually brings an end to the public part of Pewter Live. So anyone who has just popped in today to have a little look, thank you very much. Could I ask the students, competitors and their family and friends to make their way into the hall, please, and where we will have the presentation awards. Thank you.